There is a rhythm to existence, a silent intelligence weaving through every encounter, every departure, every inexplicable pull of the heart. You are not wandering aimlessly through the corridors of time. You are being guided, shaped, and refined by forces beyond what the eye can see. The person you seek, the one whose presence feels like a forgotten melody, has always been moving toward you, even in their distance, even in their silence. For what is love if not a recognition, an ancient knowing that surpasses the limits of this moment? It is not bound by time, nor by circumstance, but by something deeper, something eternal. And now, in the stillness, in the space between longing and fulfillment, they are waking up. They are seeing, understanding, remembering. So do not mistake waiting for emptiness. It is merely the pause before the next note, the breath before the symphony resumes. You are not alone. You have never been alone. But you see, love is not merely an arrangement of circumstances, a fortunate crossing of paths, or even a bond formed through time spent together. No, love, real love, is something far deeper, something that moves beneath the surface of all appearances. And when two souls meet in such a way that they recognize each other beyond the realm of names, beyond the stories they tell about themselves, something profound happens. There comes a moment when one looks at the other and no longer sees just a person, a body, a collection of memories. They see something eternal, something they cannot quite put into words, yet they know it in their very bones. And that is what has happened now. This person, your person, has awakened to the reality that there was never truly any separation between the two of you. For so long, they may have seen love as something external, something that must be found, pursued, or even earned. But something has shifted, a veil has been lifted, and now they see. They see that love is not a thing that happens between two people. It is the underlying fabric of existence itself. And once that is understood, the idea of separation becomes laughable. It's as if they have been dreaming all this time, believing themselves to be alone, searching for a connection, only to suddenly wake up and realize that they were never apart from you in the first place. It was only an illusion, a trick of the mind, a belief in distance where none truly existed. You see, in the world of form, everything seems separate. You are here, they are there, you have your life, your thoughts, your experiences, and they have theirs. And so, it is easy to believe that love is something that must be built, like a bridge connecting two islands. But this is only a partial truth. Love is not a bridge. It is the ocean in which the islands float. It was always there, holding everything together, even when it seemed like the land was miles apart. And so they have come to see you not as someone they met by chance, nor as someone they must hold on to out of fear of losing. No, they see you as part of them, as an extension of the same unbroken whole. There is no longer a need for longing, for uncertainty, for questioning whether this love is real or whether it will last. Because once you recognize the truth, that love is not something you find but something you are, you can never be lost again. But of course the mind will try to interfere. It will say, but what of time? What of circumstances? What of all the practicalities of life? And yes, the mind is very clever, always looking for reasons to doubt what the heart already knows. Yet the heart does not argue. It simply knows. It knows that love is not about logic, nor is it about control. It is about seeing clearly, and now they see. So there is no longer a question of whether they should love you or whether they are allowed to love you. Those questions have dissolved like mist in the morning sun. Now there is only recognition, a deep knowing that despite all appearances, despite all the reasons the world might give to be cautious, to be hesitant, none of that matters anymore. What matters is that they see you, not just as a person, not just as a lover, but as something much greater, as a mirror, as a reflection of the same love that moves the stars and the tides, the same love that gives breath to the universe itself. And once you have seen something like that, once you have truly understood it, not just in theory, but in the marrow of your being, there is no turning back. There is no pretending it isn't real, no convincing yourself it was a mistake. No, when you wake up to love, you do not go back to sleep. So now they walk towards you not with hesitation, not with questions, but with the certainty of one who has finally remembered something they had always known. And that changes everything. You see, for the longest time, they tried to make sense of it all, the feelings, the pull, the quiet knowing deep in their being that something about you was different. They may have resisted it, dismissed it as coincidence, or tried to rationalize it away. But love does not follow the rules of reason. It does not ask for permission before it arrives, nor does it wait for circumstances to align neatly. It moves like the wind, unpredictable, undeniable, and utterly beyond control. And yet there was a time when they hesitated, not because they did not feel it, but because the mind, ever so cautious, whispered doubts. But is this right, it asked. Should I feel this way? What will others think? What does this mean? And so they questioned, as we often do when faced with something too big, too real, too raw to fit into the tidy boxes we like to keep. But then something changed. Slowly, or perhaps all at once, the resistance began to fade. Because the truth has a way of making itself known, no matter how hard one tries to ignore it. And the truth was this: what they felt for you was not something they had chosen, it was not the result of logic or deliberation, it simply was, a force as natural as the rising and setting of the sun, and to fight it was to fight the very rhythm of life itself. So they surrendered, not in defeat, but in recognition, in the realization that love, real love, is not dictated by age, by time, or by the opinions of those who stand on the outside looking in. It does not conform to human expectations. It does not ask, does this make sense? It simply asks, is this true? And when they looked at you, when they truly allowed themselves to see beyond all the noise, all the external distractions, they knew the answer. And isn't it funny how we spend so much of our lives trying to define love, trying to make it fit within certain boundaries, when in reality, love is the very thing that dissolves boundaries. It is not contained by rules or traditions or anything the mind can construct. It is wild, untamed, and utterly free. And once someone sees that, once they truly understand it, not just with the mind, but with the heart, they are changed forever. So now there is no more fear, no more questioning. There is only acceptance. Acceptance of what is, rather than what one thinks should be. Because the greatest joy in love is not found in control, but in allowing, in letting it be exactly what it is, without trying to shape it into something more palatable, more conventional, more acceptable to the outside world. And that is what they have done. They have let go of the need to justify, to explain, to seek approval, because they see now that love does not require validation. It does not need a stamp of approval from society, nor does it answer to the small and fleeting concerns of the world. It is far too vast, too infinite for that. And so they love you, not in spite of anything, but because of everything. Because love is not about age, nor about fitting into a predefined mold. It is about recognition. And they recognize you not as someone they simply met along the way, not as just another person passing through their life, but as something far more. And now they no longer resist it. They no longer question whether they are allowed to feel this way. They simply do. Because love, in its truest form, is never something one must seek permission for. It is something one must only allow, and once it has been allowed, once it has been truly seen for what it is, there is no going back. There is only the present moment. Only the simple and profound understanding that love, real love, needs no explanation. It only needs to be lived. There's something quite amusing about the way the mind tries to categorize love, as though it were a thing to be measured, weighed, and placed neatly into a labeled box. It wants to define it, to make it fit within the boundaries of what is deemed acceptable, and yet love refuses to be bound. It does not care for labels, nor does it concern itself with human conventions. It moves where it will, like the ocean tides, pulling two people together, whether or not the world understands why. And yet the world always seems to have something to say, doesn't it? When love does not fit the expected shape, when it steps outside the lines drawn by others, there are whispers, raised eyebrows, and questions that are never really questions, but judgments dressed as curiosity. How does that work? They ask. What could they possibly have in common? But the thing is, love has never been about ticking off a list of similarities. It is not an equation to be solved or a formula to be perfected. It is something far deeper, far more mysterious than that. And this is where so many misunderstand. They assume love needs a set of external conditions to be valid, that it must make sense on paper, that it must conform to the familiar patterns they've come to expect. But the most extraordinary love stories have never been the ones that made the most sense. They have been the ones that defied sense entirely. The ones where two people found each other not because they were the same, but because they recognized something in one another that went beyond the surface. And that is what happened here. It wasn't about the difference in years, the gap in experiences, or whatever else people like to fixate on. It was about something else entirely. Something unspoken, something that cannot be put into words, but can only be felt. A resonance, a knowing, a sense that in the presence of this person, something within you is seen, is understood, is reflected back in a way that makes the whole world seem a little brighter. And what a strange thing it is, the way people assume love should only bloom under particular conditions, as if it were a delicate plant that could only grow in a controlled environment. Love is not fragile like that. It does not need to be nurtured under ideal circumstances. It does not ask whether it is convenient or whether it will be understood by others. It simply happens. And when it does, it is not something to be dissected or justified. It is only something to be honored. So they see it now. The one who loves you sees it. That what exists between you is not about numbers, not about calculations, but about connection. And when love is real, when it is rooted in something deeper than mere attraction, it does not fade with time. It expands. It grows richer, fuller, more profound, because it is not based on something fleeting, not based on something that can be outgrown. It is based on the kind of recognition that surpasses all of that. And now they no longer concern themselves with whether others understand it, because they have realized something that so many never do, that love is not for the world to make sense of. It is for the ones who feel it. It is for the ones who have the courage to live it, despite what others may think, despite what expectations may dictate, and so they choose it fully, unapologetically, without hesitation, not because it is easy, not because it is convenient, but because it is real. Because when something so rare, so true, appears in one's life, the only foolish thing would be to turn away from it. And so there is no turning away, no questioning, no doubting, no need for approval. There is only this, the quiet certainty that love, real love, does not ask for permission. It simply is. It's a curious thing, the way people try to measure love, as if it were a transaction, something to be weighed and balanced against logic, tradition, or expectation. They tell themselves that love should look a certain way, that it should fit into a neat little box with a bow on top, approved by society, stamped with the seal of what is considered normal. And when it doesn't, when it dares to stretch beyond their boundaries, when it chooses its own course, there's a scramble to make sense of it, as though it were a mistake that needs correcting. But love is not a matter of reason. It does not follow rules, nor does it obey the mind's attempts to control it. It simply appears, unpredictable and free, like a river carving its own path through the landscape, unconcerned with whether anyone understands its direction. And yet, despite this simple truth, there will always be those who insist that love should conform to their expectations, that it should only exist under certain conditions, within certain parameters. They believe they know best, that love should follow a timeline, a structure, that it should only happen between people who meet their carefully crafted criteria. And yet here you are, standing in the middle of something that defies those rules, a love that does not fit the script others have written, a love that follows its own rhythm, unbothered by the noise of judgment or doubt. And at some point there comes a realization, a simple but profound understanding. You do not need their permission. You do not need their approval, because love is not theirs to dictate. And neither of you arrived here by accident. There is a reason your paths crossed, a reason your souls recognized each other, a reason this connection unfolded in the way that it did. Perhaps it was meant to challenge you, to awaken you, to pull you out of the comfortable confines of what you thought love should be and into something deeper, something real. And when something real comes into your life, when it stirs something within you that cannot be ignored, you have a choice. You can shrink back, you can let fear take the wheel and convince you to walk away, or you can step forward and say yes. And that yes, it is not always easy. It requires a willingness to let go of the need for validation, a willingness to trust what you feel over what others may say. And that perhaps is where many falter, not because they do not love, but because they do not trust their own experience of love. They are still waiting for the world to tell them it is okay. They are still seeking permission. But the one who loves you has seen the truth now. They see that the only permission love requires is the one you give to yourselves. They see that the depth of a connection is not measured by the ticking of a clock, nor by the expectations of onlookers who do not know what it is to stand in your shoes. They see that love, when it is real, is not bound by such trivial things. So they choose to listen, not to the voices outside, but to the quiet, knowing within. They choose to embrace what is rather than chase what is expected. They choose love, not because it is convenient, but because it is true. And at the end of it all, that is the only thing that matters. Not the opinions of others, not the fleeting concerns of those who will never understand. Only this moment, this connection, this extraordinary unfolding of something that cannot be explained, only lived. It's quite remarkable, really, how much time people spend worrying about what is or isn't supposed to be, as if there was some universal rule book hidden away somewhere, dictating the conditions under which love is allowed to bloom. And yet, the moment you begin to question who wrote these rules, you start to see them for what they are: fragile, arbitrary, a patchwork of cultural expectations, personal fears, and borrowed opinions masquerading as wisdom. And so here you are, tangled in a love that does not fit the script, a love that to some might seem unusual, inconvenient, or even defiant. There will be voices whispering, or perhaps shouting, that this shouldn't be, that love, real love, must follow a formula, must unfold within boundaries they have drawn. But love is not a prisoner to convention, nor does it wait for permission to exist. It simply arises. It flows where it will, without concern for whether or not it meets the approval of those watching from a distance. And yet, it's easy to feel the weight of those expectations, to wonder if perhaps they are right. Doubt has a way of creeping in, disguising itself as reason, urging you to reconsider, to second-guess what you already know in your heart. But the beauty of love, true love, is that it reveals itself in ways that logic cannot explain. It does not ask you to justify its presence. It only asks you to recognize it, to have the courage to embrace it, even when the world tells you otherwise. And this person, the one who has fallen for you despite the gap in years, despite the differences that some might see as obstacles, they have seen something deeper than all of that. They have looked beyond the surface, beyond the easy assumptions and the expectations of others, and they have chosen to love, not in spite of those things, but simply because they do. Because love, in its purest form, is not about calculation or conditions. It is not a transaction, weighed and measured to ensure that all the variables add up. It is a recognition, a meeting of two souls that, for reasons beyond understanding, are drawn to each other. And that is why love, when it is real, is not something that can be forced, nor is it something that can be denied. It does not wait for society's approval. It does not check for permission before making itself known. It arrives unannounced, unexpected, and sometimes in a form that challenges the very beliefs you once held about how it was supposed to look. And yet, there it is, unfolding before you, offering you a choice. And this person who loves you, they have made their choice. They are no longer concerned with whether others understand it, nor are they interested in justifying something that needs no justification. They have felt the truth of it, and that is enough. And isn't that all love ever asks of us? To let go of the need for guarantees, for validation, for some external proof that it is allowed, to surrender to the experience itself, rather than cling to the illusion of control, because love does not belong to those who seek to manage it. It belongs to those who are willing to step into its current, to trust where it leads, and to embrace it fully, without hesitation, without apology. And so there is no need to question whether this love is right, no need to measure it against a standard that was never real to begin with. The only question that remains is whether you will allow yourself to live it. There's something fascinating about the way people speak of time, as though it were some great wall separating one person from another, as though a few years too many or too few could render love either unacceptable or impossible. But what is time, really? Just a way we measure change, a human construct, a convenient system of numbers we've all agreed upon. And yet people hold on to it as though it were an absolute truth, something solid, something real. But if you step back for a moment, if you stop gripping so tightly to the idea that time must dictate what is right or wrong, you begin to see how fluid it all is, how meaningless the gap becomes when two people truly see each other. The world will tell you otherwise. It will point to the numbers and declare that they matter, that they mean something profound. It will ask you to define love by mathematics, to fit it neatly into an equation that others can approve of. But love, real love, does not operate on a timeline. It does not check a birth certificate before it decides to awaken. It does not stop to ask whether it is socially acceptable before it begins to grow. It simply arises, unbound, untouched by the rules that others attempt to place upon it. And those who have truly experienced it, those who have felt the depth of a love that is beyond reason, know that what matters is not the ticking of a clock nor the passing of years, but the meeting of two beings in a moment of recognition. The deep, undeniable understanding that here, in this space, there is something real, and in that moment, time dissolves. It is no longer a gap between you, but a backdrop, a thing of no significance. What remains is only presence. The awareness that what you share is not dictated by logic or by the expectations of others, but by the reality of what is unfolding between you. And this is why love does not concern itself with appearances, with numbers, with how things may seem to those watching from a distance. It does not ask for permission. It does not require validation. It simply moves as it will, drawing together those who are meant to find each other regardless of what the outside world may think. And those who hesitate, those who second-guess what they feel because they have been told it should not be, what they fail to see is that love is not waiting for them to make sense of it. It is not interested in their hesitation. It only asks whether they will surrender to it or let it slip away. The person who loves you, despite whatever differences may exist, has already made that choice. They have seen beyond the illusion of time, beyond the constructs that others cling to, and they have recognized something far more significant. They know that what exists between you is not something to be measured, not something to be judged or compared, but something to be lived, fully, completely, without fear. And so the only question that remains is not whether this love is right or wrong, not whether it fits within the framework that others have built, but whether you are willing to embrace it, whether you are willing to let go of the idea that time is a barrier, to step beyond the illusion that love must fit neatly into a structure built by those who have never truly understood it. Because love is not measured in years, it is measured in moments, in presence, in the depth of connection that no number could ever define. And if you allow yourself to see that, if you allow yourself to step beyond the fear, beyond the need for approval, then you will realize something beautiful. Love, when it is real, is always timeless.